A modern ER doctor transmigrates into the body of a vicious supporting character from a novel, and her husband is the typical devoted second male lead. But the man who should be obsessed with the original female lead is now kissing her hand and saying he's enchanted by her. The air fills with an unsettling romantic tension. Romaine can't understand why Cedric suddenly acts so strangely. Cedric leans in without warning, close enough to feel each other's breath. Romaine freezes in shock, unable to move. She tries to push him away, but he catches her hand instead, his warm fingertips making her even more flustered. He whispers in her ear that she makes him lose control, that she changes him. She only came to visit her sick husband, yet he misunderstands her like this. Everything spirals completely beyond expectation, disrupting all her plans. Before transmigrating, she was an ordinary doctor saving lives in a rural hospital. Poor patients expressed their humble gratitude with homemade pickled vegetables. Whenever she saw patients recover, she felt unprecedented happiness. But her father fled after drowning in gambling debts, leaving her alone to face the consequences. To repay the debt, she had to work around the clock in the ER. The director's cold demand to turn away poor patients still echoes in her ears. She finally couldn't bear this place that measured human lives with money. She angrily denounced those ugly souls who didn't see patients as human beings. With shattered dreams, she left that place without looking back. Walking on unfamiliar streets, she felt deep pain over her abandoned dreams. In her daze, she didn't notice the truck speeding around the corner. In her final moments, she felt unwilling to end her life this way. She used her last strength to make a wish, vowing to live freely in her next life. When she opens her eyes again, she hears her maid Jane calling out with worry. She looks around in confusion, not understanding why she's here. She discovers in shock that she's in a bedroom more luxurious than imaginable. The blonde woman in the mirror makes her unable to believe that's her now. Learning her identity from the maid, she remembers this is a story she read. The devoted second male lead who guards the female lead in the original story is now her husband. He's exactly as described in the book, chasing a love that won't be returned. She has actually become the most despised, vicious supporting character in the book. The original owner staged this drama by poisoning herself just to get attention. According to the original story, she will soon be exposed and expelled from the mansion. Just waking up to face being kicked out, she feels helpless. Looking at Jane, who treats her sincerely, she decides to be better to the girl. Thinking of her husband risking his life for his unrequited love, she finds it both ridiculous and pitiful. She understands his role as the tragic second male lead, but as his wife, she feels hurt. At this moment, the maid reports that the Count has finished training and is heading this way. She bitterly realizes that his wife's collapse doesn't affect his fixed schedule. Since she's destined to be kicked out anyway, she decides to properly appreciate her husband in name only. In the original story, Cedric is a perfect man who makes all women swoon. His appearance is perfect, like a work of art carefully sculpted by the gods. When he pushes the door open, his deep voice calls her name like smooth wine. He walks quickly toward her, saying he rushed over as soon as he heard she woke up. The moment she turns around, she's stunned by his breathtakingly handsome face, so amazed that she unconsciously gets a nosebleed. Romaine frantically wipes away the nosebleed, her mind dazed by his stunning beauty. Cedric first watches everything with an expressionless face, then dramatically asks about her condition, his tone full of concern. He clutches his chest, speaking of the heartache and despair when he heard she collapsed. Romaine stares dumbfounded at his exaggerated performance, completely at a loss. She hurriedly recalls their relationship in the original story, trying to make sense of the situation. In her memory, he said they had an agreement to pretend to be a loving couple in public, and she had bluntly stated that she was merely using him. Tears well up in Cedric's eyes as he says he wants to embrace her but fears hurting her. Romaine is certain this is definitely acting, and her guard goes up. Jane is moved to tears, deeply believing in the genuine feelings between them. Romaine sends Jane and others away, eager to speak with him alone. When everyone leaves, Cedric immediately reverts to his cold, true self. Romaine gathers her courage, solemnly requesting a divorce. He looks at her silently, then uses the Emperor's command as his reason for refusal. She cleverly counters that the arranged marriage only required them to marry, not to be happy together. She suggests pushing the blame for divorce onto her, since he doesn't love her anyway. Cedric falls into thought, ultimately deciding to postpone the matter. He turns to leave, agreeing to discuss this in detail at breakfast tomorrow. Romaine is furious, not understanding why he wants to delay the divorce. The next morning, she sits on the bed sulking about yesterday's conversation. She recalls the Emperor's command and the story's background. Her father, Count Hubert Carlyle, was originally a war hero of the Kingdom of Latour, but he betrayed them during the war with the Kingdom of Martin. After helping the Kingdom of Martin win the war, he was promoted to Duke, but his past disloyalty also led to ostracism from other nobles. Eventually, the Emperor granted this marriage to help their family establish themselves. At this moment, Jane finishes dressing her, interrupting her thoughts. This blue gown is exquisite and magnificent, making her skin look like snow. She composes herself and decides to head to the dining room to face this negotiation. Cedric has been waiting for a while, his acting even more masterful than yesterday. Seeing Romaine arrive, he orders the servants to serve the food, but the servant serving the food suddenly trembles. The last dish falls to the ground. The servant suddenly collapses, his forehead darkening, foaming at the mouth. Romaine recognizes these as epilepsy symptoms and immediately rushes forward. She doesn't care that her gown gown will get dirty, her only thought is to save the patient. Cedric quietly observes her every move from the dining table. Romaine tries to lift the servant but lacks the strength, urgently calling for help from those around her. She directs everyone to move dangerous items away, ensuring the patient's safety. The servant's convulsing arm accidentally strikes her forehead, leaving a red swollen mark. Everyone is terrified, fearing she'll fly into a rage and severely punish the servant. After handling everything, she gasps for breath. Fortunately, the patient's breathing finally stabilizes. Looking at the soiled, magnificent gown, she feels deeply helpless. Other servants nervously promise to make Emilio compensate for the damaged gown. She knows well that in this class-stratified society, a villainess would punish servants severely, but she suddenly stands up, firmly stating that a human life is far more important than a gown. Under everyone's stunned gazes, she decides to return to her room to change clothes first. Before leaving, she glances at Cedric's consistently expressionless, indifferent appearance. She says sarcastically that it looks like he'll be enjoying breakfast alone. Back in her room, Jane brings breakfast and asks with concern about her condition. She brushes it off casually, as if it's just an ordinary small matter. Jane reports that the servant Emilio requests an audience, and she grants this request. Emilio enters and immediately kneels and kowtows, convinced he's committed a capital offense. He cries that he's prayed to the gods but still can't escape this terrible curse. Romaine's heart aches at this era's ignorance in viewing illness as a curse. She tells the servant to rise, her eyes full of pity and understanding, but she requires him to promise to follow her dietary and rest requirements. She writes down a low-carb, high-fat diet list on paper. Learning he only sleeps 6 hours a day, she firmly demands he must get 8 hours of sleep. This is the best she can do, in a world without anti-seizure medication. She immediately sets out to request a job transfer for Emilio. Then she arrives at Cedric's study. Cedric assumes she wants to continue discussing the divorce. He hears her pleading for the servant. He sneers, questioning whether she's pretending to be kind. She suppresses her anger and suggests transferring Emilio to the laundry or library. He continues to provoke her, saying she's never cared about servants' work like this before. To stay calm, her gaze unconsciously falls on his chest muscles. But when he questions why she knows so much about this disease, she finally explodes, denouncing him as someone living in luxury who doesn't understand common people's suffering. Recalling those patients from her past life who couldn't afford medical care due to poverty, she emotionally leans on the desk, her voice trembling. After speaking, she immediately regrets revealing too much about her past life and prepares to leave. But he unexpectedly agrees to the transfer, leaving her puzzled. After she leaves, Cedric immediately orders the poisonous plant incident to be covered up. The servant Roberto is shocked by his sudden change of mind. Cedric warns him that if he leaks this, he'll hold him responsible. At this moment, his mind is full of doubts. He's determined to discover her true intentions. This suddenly changed Romaine makes him have to be vigilant. Romaine lies in bed regretting that she said too much to that man. Thinking about how her sudden change aroused his suspicion adds another embarrassing moment to her history. She gets up to think about her options after divorce. She must understand the outside situation. When she opens the wardrobe to prepare outdoor clothing, she discovers a hidden handle. After hesitating for a moment, she decides to open this mysterious door. After entering the secret room, she's surprised to discover it's actually a library. She casually flips through a notebook that contains detailed records of various medicinal recipes. When putting the book back, a piece of paper with a drawing of a short-haired girl falls out. It reads, "My dear Lily." Just as she's puzzled, Jane's voice comes from outside the door. Jane reports that Duke Hubert Carlyle has suddenly arrived for a visit. Seeing her messy hair, Jane hurriedly tidies her appearance. A moment later, she changes into another outfit. She recalls the loving image of her father in the original story, who fell ill when she married. She imagines with anticipation the warm scene of father and daughter reuniting. Walking into the parlor, Hubert smiles, saying he came specially to visit his beloved daughter. She playfully chides her father for visiting without notice, her heart full of sweetness. However, when the servants withdraw, Hubert's expression instantly changes. He questions her through gritted teeth about how she can still smile in such circumstances. The scandal of her discord with her husband has already spread throughout noble society. He pinches her face, scolding her for not even being able to keep up appearances. She finally understands that the so-called loving father is just a carefully disguised facade. Hubert stares at her intently, waiting for a satisfactory answer. He raises his hand as if to strike, and Romaine trembles all over in fear. It turns out Romaine has always lived under her father's violent shadow. Thinking that she encountered such a father in both lives, her heart feels like it's being cut. Just as she resolves to fight back, the door is suddenly pushed open. Cedric's appearance makes Hubert immediately put on his loving father mask. He gently strokes her face, pretending to care that she's lost weight. The two men exchange pleasantries on the surface but are actually confrontational. Hubert accuses Cedric of not valuing marital affection. Cedric sarcastically responds that he's too concerned with other people's family affairs. The tense atmosphere finally eases temporarily with false smiles. Cedric prepares to leave, letting them be alone. She panics. She absolutely can't be alone with Hubert. In desperation, she calls out darling in a sweet voice. Cedric stops at the door, showing an incredulous expression. Romaine pretends to be calm and invites Cedric to stay for tea. Cedric stops and turns to look into her eyes. She hurriedly adds that husband and wife shouldn't have too many reservations. Hubert makes excuses, saying he must leave first. She makes a show of asking him to stay, but inwardly hopes this hypocritical father will leave quickly. As Hubert departs, he gives her a threatening look. After confirming her father has left, she can finally relax. She recalls that the original story never mentioned Romain suffering long-term abuse from her father. Cedric slowly approaches, saying he wants to talk about the divorce. He admits frankly that rumors of their marital discord have long circulated in noble circles. She only now realizes that his previous claim of not knowing was all an act, but the constraint of the emperor's arranged marriage isn't something they can easily break. This marriage involves the interests of two families. He directly states that he needs this marriage to secure his inheritance. She's surprised that this seemingly devoted man is actually so pragmatic. He suddenly demands that she stop those deliberately offensive behaviors. This statement shocks her. It matches exactly what she guessed when reading the novel. It turns out he saw through her true intention to leave all along. Although unwilling, she understands there's no other choice now. She agrees to maintain the surface marriage until he inherits the title, but he suddenly indicates he'll change his attitude toward her. This sudden shift immediately puts her on guard. She immediately proposes needing a huge divorce settlement as security. Hearing the demand for $1 million in compensation, he shows a meaningful smile. He says he didn't expect her to be so clever. She can't tell if this is genuine praise or veiled sarcasm. He readily agrees to the terms and writes a formal contract on the spot. The contract clearly stipulates they must maintain the appearance of a loving couple. After he inherits the title, they'll divorce immediately, and he'll pay the compensation. Cedric holds the contract alone in thought, his expression complex and inscrutable. Romain puts away the contract and leaves, beginning to plan how to use this money to start a new life. But she accidentally gets a paper cut, and she frowns slightly. Back in her room, she finds Jane isn't there and everything is unusually quiet. A bouquet of purple hydrangeas has appeared on the table at some point. Then Jane enters the room, approaching with concern. She hurriedly hides the contract, afraid someone might discover this secret. Her gaze falls on the flower bouquet on the table, and she curiously asks about its origin. Jane happily tells her this is a thank you gift from Emilio. Her heart instantly softens, and she gently touches the petals, lost in thought. She recalls the daisies sent by the little boy she treated in her past life. Those 3 little wildflowers in the crooked thank you note remain unforgettable. It turns out that no matter which world, sincere gratitude is equally precious. She tells Jane to rest first, and she'll call for her when needed. At this moment, she discovers the wound on her hand has already healed. This abnormal speed makes her feel slightly uneasy. Late at night, Cedric meets someone secretly deep in the garden. Sylvia reports Duke Carlisle's recent movements, and every detail about Emilio sending flowers as thanks. He can't help asking why a noble lady would need such a huge sum of money. Sylvia bluntly says she's treating her husband like an easy mark. He admits irritably that he's that fool. Then he looks up at Romain's lit window, his mind full of confusion. A few days later, Romain elegantly drinks tea in the courtyard, but in reality, she's bored to tears. Because of bridge repairs, she's been trapped in the mansion for an entire week. She's even read all the medical books over and over several times. At this moment, Jane excitedly reports that the bridge has been repaired. Hearing that the Duke and Duchess are about to return, she feels both anticipation and unease. Next, she'll need to face Alina, who always targeted her in the original story. She decides to act well with Cedric to avoid arousing their suspicion. She walks in the courtyard while thinking. At this time, she meets the kind old gardener Kendall. She notices the serious skin problem on his hands. Her professional instinct immediately kicks in, and she asks about the cause. But Kendall says this is a common occupational hazard for gardeners. To rush the work to welcome the Duke, they couldn't protect themselves properly. She feels sorry for these hardworking people and ashamed of her own idleness. She praises Kendall for maintaining the courtyard impeccably. As she turns to leave, a strong determination surges within her. She decides to find a place where she can contribute. Cedric learns that the Duke and Duchess are about to arrive at the mansion. He specially changes into formal attire, preparing to greet them together with Romain. However, Roberto notices his master has been paying particular attention to his wife lately. Cedric arrives at Romain's room and finds the door slightly ajar. Through the gap, he sees parasols scattered all over the floor and is quite surprised. Romain awkwardly explains she's selecting a suitable parasol. Jane hurries over to dress and prepare the lady, and she asks Cedric to leave the room. While waiting, Cedric recalls the formerly extravagant and willful Romain. Back then, she was always involved in scandals with other noble men. Now she only cares about an ordinary parasol. Her personality is completely different from before. After changing into her gown, Romain asks Cedric where she can buy lightweight parasols. Cedric decides not to mention her poisoning incident for now. He says he'll explain to his parents the truth about her previous collapse. Romain wonders if he knows who masterminded the incident, but he says what matters is maintaining their surface relationship. She realizes he values the title far more than she imagined. He extends his hand, inviting her to begin today's performance. Romain naturally takes his arm, affectionately calling him darling. This term of endearment makes his ear tips slightly flush. The two walk downstairs side by side to greet the returning Duke and Duchess. Alina enthusiastically greets Cedric, Sarian immediately asserts his claim over Alina. A subtle atmosphere permeates between the two brothers, but Alina unabashedly takes Cedric's hand. Romain secretly plans to leave after staying briefly. The Duchess asks with concern about her previous collapse. Cedric skillfully attributes the cause to spoiled food. Alina shows great worry and sympathy. Cedric dramatically describes his anxiety at the time. Romain cooperatively says she's grateful he watched over her all night. This statement makes Alina suddenly fall silent. She then suggests the four of them have tea and catch up. After the Duke and Duchess leave, the atmosphere becomes awkward. Just moments ago, Alina was smiling as she invited everyone for tea. Now she thoughtfully says Romain isn't feeling well and needn't force herself to attend. Cedric immediately speaks up in her defense, saying her health has long recovered, but Alina still insists she worries about overexertion, her words implying Romain is a burden. Romain also doesn't want to be stuck between these three close people. As she turns to leave, she steps on her hem and loses balance. In her panic, she grabs the nearest support, which turns out to be Cedric's collar. Both are caught off guard by this unexpected situation. Romain's palm presses tightly against his warm chest. Her cheeks instantly burn red, even her ears turning crimson. She hurriedly tries to get up, but he catches her arm. Cedric publicly announces he'll take care of her, directly ending this gathering. On the way back to her room, she feels extremely embarrassed and keeps apologizing. But Cedric says coldly that this is just fulfilling his contractual obligation. Romain mistakenly thinks she ruined his chance to spend time with Alina. At dusk, Alina and Sarian have tea in the garden. She still frowns with worry about Romain's health. Sarian directly reveals the rumor that she may have poisoned herself, but Alina softly says she hopes Cedric can be gentle with her. She reminisces about how considerate Cedric was to his family when young. Sarian keenly notices his brother's attitude toward Romain is different from before. Alina is somewhat surprised. Then she smiles sweetly, saying she'll work hard to build a closer relationship with Romain. The next day, Romain finally gets to go out, feeling cheerful. She first rushes to the bank to check her savings, but she discovers only a few thin bills remaining in her account. This amount is too little even to buy an apartment, leaving her completely puzzled. Walking under the scorching sun, ladies on the street all carry parasols for shade. She notices Jane never uses a parasol. Jane quietly explains it's improper etiquette for servants to use parasols. Romain doesn't hesitate to pull her under the shade of the parasol. She even laughs, saying if anyone dares gossip, she'll give him a piece of her mind. Passing by an accessory shop, she insists on buying Jane a gift, thinking of how this innocent girl suffered considerable grievances because of her poisoning. She carefully selects a butterfly brooch with spread wings ready to fly. She softly tells Jane to wear it on memorable days. Jane holds the brooch with tears glistening, this warmth exceeding expectations. Romain takes Jane into an exquisite parasol shop. She carefully selects lightweight styles, buying 5 at once. Jane looks at her puzzled, not understanding why she needs so many. Then they purchase many unexpected items. As they prepare to leave carrying numerous bags, Jane suddenly asks if they're not going to the perfume shop today. Romain only then learns the original owner visited the perfume shop weekly. She immediately changes her mind and decides to investigate, but Jane says she'll wait in the carriage. As is customary, this unusual behavior makes Romain even more suspicious. Pushing open the shop door, inside looks quite ordinary. A clerk named Luther approaches familiarly. He leads her directly toward a hidden basement. The dim secret room is filled with various medicine bottles. Luther introduces each medicine's effects like treasures. Romain is shocked to discover these are just common medications. What shocks her more is the astronomical prices of these medicines. She flips through transaction records. The amounts are staggeringly high. She finally understands where the original owner's money went, but strangely, she's never seen these medicines at home. She forms a plan, proposing to let Luther earn a commission. The condition is he must reveal the mastermind's name. Luther initially firmly refuses to reveal any information. When she pretends to terminate the deal, he finally relents. The name Duke Halliburton makes her fall into thought. This mysterious figure never appeared in the original story. She hurries back to the mansion with the purchased medicines. She immediately orders Jane not to let anyone disturb her. Closing the door, she begins organizing today's findings, but she keeps feeling she's forgotten something important. This thought lingers, making her vaguely uneasy. After Cedric's gathering today ends, he searches everywhere for Romain at the agreed location. This morning, Romain said she had matters to attend to and couldn't keep the appointment, but she promised to come greet him in the evening, playing a wife waiting for her husband. But now he doesn't see Romain anywhere. Alina notices his unusual behavior and softly asks what he's looking for. He blurts out that he doesn't see Romain, his tone carrying disappointment. Sarian teases that looking for his wife first thing is unlike him. Alina quickly stops Sarian's teasing, her expression subtle. Cedric recalls how he always attended gatherings alone before. Those scenes of noble ladies whispering about him always being alone. Now Romain offered to greet him but is nowhere to be seen, making him feel deeply disappointed. He suddenly solemnly announces Romain has always had a place in his heart. Not until she poisoned herself did he understand love needs to be spoken to have meaning. Alina remains silent, watching him with complex eyes. The more he speaks, the more awkward he feels. while the two behind him think this is an act. Roberto comes to greet him, whispering a message in his ear. Hearing that Romain has forbidden anyone from entering her room, his expression suddenly changes. He has no heart to continue performing and hurriedly leaves. This usually composed war hero is now completely flustered. He suspects this is her new scheme, yet can't help worrying. For several days in a row, Jane blocks him at the door with various excuses. Romain never gives him a reasonable explanation. He vents by training intensely with the knights on the training ground. Sweat soaks his clothes, but can't wash away his irritation. He orders all knights to reform ranks and continue intensive training. Not until exhausted does his mind become slightly clearer. Suddenly hearing someone call out "my lady," he immediately looks up. Romain is having gardeners try on specially made sun hats. She carefully explains these were specially designed for sun protection. The gardeners accept the gifts gratefully, thanking her repeatedly. As she turns to hand ointment to Kendall, she gets startled. Cedric stands behind her like a ghost, his expression dark. He forcefully pulls her to a secluded corner. He grips her shoulders tightly, demanding to know what she's up to. His serious gaze makes her heart skip a beat, leaving her confused. Just as Romain is about to explain, Cedric's icy gaze cuts her off. He demands why she keeps avoiding him, not even keeping the most basic agreements. She only then remembers she was completely absorbed in crafting and forgot all agreements. These past days she experimented repeatedly, finally completing the specially made sun hats. Imagining the gardeners working with hats, no longer tormented by sunlight, suddenly she realizes this mansion's management has many problems. Matters that should be the lady's responsibility are handled chaotically. She suspects it's actually Alina managing household affairs now. Alina was originally the only daughter of Duke Jared's family. After losing both parents at age 10, she was adopted by the Duke and Duchess. This orphan has now become the best candidate for the next Duchess, but since she has an agreement with Cedric, she must help him. His dark expression now makes her realize the situation is serious. She hurriedly explains she's been making sun protection items for the servants these days. She wants to prove she's capable of being a competent lady of the house. After a moment of silence, he finally softens his tone. He reminds her not to forget to prepare for tonight's important occasion. Back in her room, she learns from Jane that tonight is their intimacy night. Although in the original story nothing ever happened between them, but she's still very nervous. Jane excitedly brings out various gifts sent by the Duchess. Those fertility herbs and cosmetics leave her not knowing whether to laugh or cry. Meanwhile, Alina is strolling in the garden with the Duchess. She subtly hints that Romain might be dissatisfied with her household management. The Duchess immediately expresses full support for Alina. At this moment, they see Kendall wearing that specially made sun hat. Alina finds the look comical, but the Duchess praises Romain for knowing how to care for servants. This statement makes Alina feel an unprecedented sense of crisis. Night falls, and Cedric waits in the room wearing a robe. Romain walks in stiffly, the atmosphere suffocatingly awkward. He hands her a glass of red wine, trying to ease the tension. She drains it in one gulp, then asks for several more in succession. Slightly tipsy, she finally asks the question buried in her heart. This forced marriage, has he ever regretted it too? After a moment of silence, he says quietly that even regret wouldn't change anything. She suddenly pounds his chest emotionally, demanding why he always buries all his emotions deep inside. He's so shocked by her sudden concern that he can't speak. He suddenly remembers Alina once said Romain would be very lonely alone. He softly asks her true thoughts about this marriage, but Romain suddenly hugs him, rambling drunkenly, talking about this marriage as if she's an outsider commenting on it, then murmuring regrets about not being able to save more patience back then, wishing she could be wealthier to fulfill her dreams. He's completely confused by her chaotic words. Not understanding why this noble lady always worries about money, she suddenly leans close, her finger flirtatiously lifting his chin, drunkenly asking if he's ever tasted a kiss in his life. Her breath draws closer and closer, making his heartbeat suddenly accelerate. He nervously closes his eyes, waiting for that kiss to fall. After waiting a long time, he discovers Romain has fallen fast asleep on his shoulder. Cedric can only helplessly place her on the bed and carefully tuck her in. The next morning, Romain wakes with a splitting hangover headache. Cedric timely hands her a glass of warm water, his gaze meaningful. He demands that from now on she must have him present when drinking. This statement makes her panic, immediately, thinking she caused some disaster. At breakfast, the Duke announces they've received an invitation to the Halliburton family banquet. She immediately recalls this is exactly that mysterious medicine dealer's name. Alina and the Duchess discuss Lucia's illness. She keenly senses that Benson's trip abroad might be to search for medicine. When Cedric expresses unwillingness to attend the banquet, she proactively offers to accompany him. Alina enthusiastically asks her to deliver a birthday gift on her behalf. She readily agrees, unaware of the hidden trap. After leaving the table, Cedric specifically warns her to stay away from Duke Halliburton. She playfully asks if this means he cares about her. He's about to refute but stops. His face flushing, he admits this feeling. He softly asks her to stay by his side, but Romain thinks he's worried she'll cause trouble. She doesn't notice Cedric's ears have turned completely red. Meanwhile, after Alina learns the gift has been handed to Romain, she shows a meaningful smile. Late at night in the study, Cedric sits in an armchair without saying a word. Roberto notices his master has been deeply troubled lately. It all started with that boat gathering a few days ago. At the time, two young couples were leisurely boating on the lake. Cedric and Alina were chatting happily, laughing constantly. Romaine, however, stared blankly at the lake surface alone, as if detached from it all. As soon as the boat docked, she rushed to stand up, wanting to leave alone. Unexpectedly, her foot slipped. Her entire body plunged into the icy lake water. The heavy dress dragged her down like a boulder. In that moment, she truly thought she was going to die like this. Cedric jumped into the water without hesitation and swam toward her. When he pulled her ashore, she was already pale with fear and trembling all over. He held her tightly, feeling her violently racing heartbeat. She shivered in his arms. Choking up, she said she thought she was really going to die at the bottom of that lake. In that moment, his heart felt like it had been struck hard by something. Thinking back to that scene now, he still feels restless and disturbed. At the same time, he keeps remembering how she looked that night when she asked him if he'd ever kissed anyone. He suddenly stands up and orders Roberto to prepare for the training grounds, trying to numb his chaotic thoughts with intense training. At the banquet a few days later, they walk side by side into Duke Halliburton's estate. Seeing the garden full of flowers, Cedric explains, "This is the Halliburton family's main business." She immediately connects this might be a cover for obtaining medicinal herbs. The moment they step into the banquet hall, countless eyes focus on them. Those whispers and contemptuous looks pierce like needles. She pretends to be calm and quietly takes Cedric's arm. He understands and wraps his arm around her waist, pulling her closer. This intimate gesture makes both of them blush slightly. An elegant lady suddenly approaches and exchanges pleasantries with them. She then meaningfully suggests she'd like to speak with Romaine alone. This sudden invitation sets off alarm bells in her mind. Cedric, however, gently says it's nothing and tells her to go ahead. She silently curses how quickly this man goes back on his word. Markworth brings her into a group of noble ladies. They speak in elegant tones, with confusing words, but Romaine keenly senses the malice within. They beat around the bush, inquiring about her relationship with her husband. She barely maintains a smile, dealing with these probes one by one, until Markworth bluntly mocks her for poisoning herself to seek attention. This remark instantly reminds her of all the grievances from her past life. Those doctors also used the same hypocritical concern to ostracize her, pushing unpopular work onto her, stealing her opportunities. In this life, she vows never to swallow her anger in silence again. She calmly analyzes the subtext of every sentence just spoken. Then she begins to flaunt her affectionate life with her husband. The ladies are surprised to discover she's not as simple as the rumors suggest. They then mock her for being too promiscuous in high society in the past. She cleverly attributes this to her husband's excessive possessiveness. Finally, she silences them with explicit details of marital intimacy. She demands they keep today's conversation confidential, hinting that if her husband finds out, the consequences will be severe. Markworth's malice is completely shattered, and she hastily makes excuses. Romaine flashes a perfect fake smile, ending this confrontation. In the distance, Cedric wonders what they're discussing. Edward suddenly appears, interrupting his thoughts. An uninformed Viscount is surprised by his arrival. Edward hastily stops the Viscount from continuing this topic, but the Viscount has already brought up matters from their academy days. Cedric's expression instantly turns terrifyingly dark. He leaves without looking back, leaving everyone embarrassed. Edward has no choice but to explain that unpleasant past. Back then, both were the Academy's most outstanding students. A clash over thesis topics sparked the conflict. Benson appeared humble but secretly sabotaged him. In the end, he even humiliated Cedric, saying he wasn't worthy of being his opponent. These words deeply wounded Cedric's pride. He suddenly rushed forward, pinned him to the ground, and his fists fell hard. Benson struggled in panic but couldn't break free from his grip. From that moment on, their relationship was completely shattered. This unpleasant past still bothers Cedric to this day. Suddenly, rising commotion interrupts his memories. Benson enters elegantly. He moves through the crowd, walking straight toward Romaine. He hands her a handkerchief, claiming it's something she dropped. Romaine takes it in confusion, discovering this isn't hers. Unfolding the handkerchief, she sees the invitation note hidden inside. The message asking her to meet alone on the balcony greatly surprises her. Cedric hears whispers from the surrounding nobles. He turns around only to find Romaine has disappeared, and anger immediately flares. At this moment, Benson is leisurely sipping wine on the balcony, waiting. Romaine approaches with a serious expression, somewhat guarded. Benson casually tells her to relax, admitting Luther has informed him of everything. He bluntly asks her what exactly she wants to know. The gazes from around make it difficult for her to ask about the medicinal herbs. Benson understands and suggests inviting her to his estate another day for a proper discussion. She turns to take her leave, only to run into an furious Cedric. The three stand in silent confrontation, the atmosphere suffocatingly tense. Benson's ambiguous words only add fuel to the fire. Cedric turns and leaves with a cold face, and Romaine hurries after him. At this moment, the banquet's guest of honor, Miss Lucia, makes a stunning entrance. She wears a yellow gown, appearing exceptionally gentle and charming. After the ball begins, Romaine thinks it's time to head home, but Cedric suddenly invites her to dance. She frantically says she doesn't know how to dance at all. He insists on leading her, his movements gentle yet allowing no refusal. As she spins in his arms, she notices a change in his expression. His once stiff act now reveals genuine emotion. His flushed cheeks and flickering eyes betray his feelings. Romaine is about to say something when a cry of alarm alarm interrupts her. Lucia suddenly collapses, gasping painfully in Benson's arms. Romaine immediately recognizes Lucia is having a hyperventilation attack. She anxiously looks around for something that can serve as a paper bag. Finally, she spots a gift wrapping bag that can be useful. She rushes forward without hesitation. While unwrapping the gift packaging, she asks Benson to let go of Lucia. Benson is shocked and confused by her actions, but she firmly states she has a way to relieve the symptoms. Under her earnest gaze, Benson finally releases his hold. She quickly places the rolled wrapping paper over Lucia's nose and mouth. She softly instructs her to breathe slowly and deeply. Benson watches his sister's condition tensely. The surrounding crowd also watches with bated breath. Gradually, Lucia's breathing becomes steady and regular. When Lucia can finally breathe on her own, everyone breathes a sigh of relief. Benson urgently asks his sister how she feels now. Romaine suggests taking her back to her room to rest and loosen her corset. Only then does she realize she has become the center of attention. Cedric quickly steps forward, concerned about her condition. She apologizes to him for her impulsive behavior, but he praises her for helping stabilize Lucia's breathing. Benson sincerely expresses his gratitude, promising to visit and thank her properly later. Lucia also weakly thanks her. Whispers spread through the crowd about the source of her medical knowledge. Cedric timely suggests they should leave this place of gossip. In the carriage on the way back, he's curious where she learned these things. She vaguely says she learned it while taking care of patients. He reminds her she shouldn't always act so impulsively. If the situation had worsened, the consequences would have been unthinkable. Only then does she understand he's worried about her safety. When Cedric personally admits he is indeed worried about her, her heart feels like it's been gently touched by something. The carriage suddenly jolts violently, and he immediately shields her. At this moment, Roberto comes to report. The coachman has hit his head and cannot continue driving. She gets out of the carriage, without hesitation, to treat the injured, completely disregarding his earlier warning. Romaine settles the coachman on flat grass to treat him. She carefully observes his condition, confirming no signs of brain hemorrhage. Now the only thing to address is the wound on his head that keeps bleeding. She tells the coachman to count from 1 to 300 while she presses firmly to stop the bleeding. The coachman keeps sobbing from pain and guilt, and she sternly demands he focus on counting. She's considering whether it's possible to suture the wound. A burning sensation surges from her palm, a searing pain as if burned by flames. She screams and releases her hand, only to find her palm completely unharmed. Cedric rushes over at the sound, and she pretends to be calm, saying it's nothing. After continuing to press the wound, the bleeding miraculously stops. Cedric decides everyone will ride horses back to the estate. He extends his hand, inviting her to ride with him on one horse, his tone exceptionally gentle. Romaine has never ridden a horse and is so nervous her entire body stiffens. He thoughtfully sits behind her, holding her protectively in his arms. As the horse gallops, she's terrified out of her wits, with no mind for romance. By the time they reach the estate, she's already drowsy from the jolting ride. Cedric can't bear to wake her and gently carries her through the door. He encounters Alina in the parlor, who looks at them in surprise. Alina urgently asks if anyone is injured. Romaine, awakened by the noise, stirs in his arms. He briefly explains the carriage accident and Romaine saving someone. As he turns to leave, he doesn't notice Alina's dark expression. When Romaine wakes, she finds herself changed into sleepwear. Thinking it was Cedric, her heart races with butterflies. When Jane comes in, she learns it was Jane who helped change her clothes. This misunderstanding leaves her mortified beyond words. Alone, she begins to ponder the burning sensation in her palm. This strange feeling makes her suspicious about the original owner's identity. At this moment, Cedric is in the study listening to the doctor's report. The doctor says in confusion that the coachman bled heavily, but there's no wound to be found. This bizarre news leaves Cedric utterly shocked. Cedric repeatedly confirms the doctor's diagnosis in disbelief. The doctor trembles as he swears he couldn't possibly be mistaken. Cedric suppresses his shock and instructs the doctor to keep this secret. After the doctor leaves, he immediately orders Roberto to send a letter. The atmosphere at the breakfast table the next day is subtle and tense. Alina and Cedric chat happily, their manner intimate. Romaine observes silently, concluding that Cedric still likes Alina. This realization makes her chest tighten inexplicably. The Duchess suddenly praises her for saving Lucia yesterday. She mentions the Halliburton family specially sent a tea party invitation to express thanks. This recognition makes her feel honored, her eyes slightly warming. Alina forces a smile, asking if the gift was successfully delivered. Romaine regretfully says she didn't see Lucia's reaction to unwrapping the gift. She promises to ask about her preferences on her next visit. Cedric says he has an appointment tomorrow and cannot accompany her. She politely declines the suggestion to go with Alina, deciding to go alone. She then asks with concern about the coachman's injury, and Cedric deflects with a light response. The Duchess again praises her kind deed, her eyes full of pride, but Cedric notices a fleeting shadow in Alina's eyes. On the day of the appointment, Jane excitedly accompanies her to the Halliburton estate. She notices Jane isn't wearing the butterfly brooch. Jane touches her pocket tenderly, saying this makes her very happy. She compares this gift to a medal awarded to a knight. Touched, she suggests Jane become her personal knight. The two exchange smiles, making a little secret of their own. Meanwhile, Cedric meets with Edward on the city wall. Edward teases about Duke Carlisle's act of betrayal. Cedric sternly stops him, defending his father-in-law's dignity. When discussing married life, he shows a rare gentle smile. Edward is shocked, wondering if he has fallen for real. Cedric changes the subject and asks about the investigation results on the Myers clan. Edward reveals this mysterious group possesses healing abilities, but they were wiped out decades ago by nations joining forces, simply because they could change the course of wars. Finally, he says in a low voice that their fatal weakness is actually water. Edward lowers his voice to speak of that chilling method. To completely eliminate people with immortal bodies, drowning is the only option. Cedric solemnly mentions the secret decree issued by His Majesty, requiring a nationwide search for people with healing abilities. A flash of excitement crosses Edward's eyes, eager to act. If they can find survivors of the Myers clan, they'll surely be rewarded with titles and promotions. Cedric sternly demands he keep today's conversation confidential. As he leaves, Edward wears a calculating expression. At this moment, Romaine finds herself in the Halliburton family's sea of flowers. The reception room is filled with exotic flowers, their fragrance overwhelming. Benson approaches her elegantly with a charming smile. She awkwardly mentions she thought it was Lucia's invitation. He openly admits this was the only way to get her to come. She recalls Cedric's wary gaze and can't help but sigh. She then bluntly points out the problem of excessively expensive medicine prices. Benson is startled at first, then bursts into hearty laughter. She further presses about the reason for the kingdom's medicinal herb shortage. Benson meaningfully mentions the past of the Myers clan. In the past, people relied too heavily on their healing abilities. This led to stagnant medical development and insufficient medicinal supplies. She clenches her fists, angered by this absurd reason, so she proposes the idea of developing medicines independently. Benson thinks this proposal is too idealistic. She then changes the subject and asks about Lucia's condition. Learning her symptoms worsen in crowded settings, she appears thoughtful. Romaine stands up, her gaze determined, and requests to see the bedroom. Under Benson's guidance, Romaine enters Lucia's room. She immediately points out how the room's arrangement harms the patient. The flower pots by the window allow pollen to drift inside with the wind. Too many dolls are also detrimental to respiratory health. She confidently guarantees that improving the environment will relieve the symptoms. Benson is surprised by her straightforward words. He then shows a playful smile, saying she's too rude, yet he says this side of her actually interests him. He gently takes Romaine's hand, extending an invitation to collaborate. Romaine's heart races, startled by Benson's sudden move. She frantically pulls her hand back, her voice rising involuntarily. She solemnly declares she is a married woman. Benson is stunned, then realizes her misunderstanding. He hastily explains he meant a business partnership, not romance. She's so embarrassed she wishes she could crawl into a hole. Benson narcissistically cups his face, saying he often causes such misunderstandings. He suggests she consider the collaboration proposal carefully, with no rush to answer. As she's leaving, Benson suddenly calls her back, saying he has something important to tell her. When she returns to the estate, Romaine unexpectedly finds Alina waiting at the entrance. Alina warmly asks about her meeting with Lucia, then enthusiastically invites her to join for afternoon tea. This is the first time Alina has been so proactively friendly. She's touched, thinking she can finally improve their relationship. Alina affectionately holds her hand, complaining the estate feels lonely. She says she'd love to hear stories about her helping the servants. Romaine naively thinks Alina has truly changed her opinion of her. Following her to the garden, she discovers 3 other ladies are present. The refreshments are nearly gone. Clearly, they've been chatting for quite a while. This discovery stirs unease in her heart, but Alina casually turns the conversation to her. The ladies suddenly begin taking turns praising her good deeds. This abrupt change makes her feel thoroughly uncomfortable. Markworth mentions the Myers clan with loaded implications, hinting that her medical knowledge could easily cause misunderstandings. Romaine wants to refute, but finds herself too nervous to speak. At this moment, she recalls Benson's parting warning. He specifically asked if the gift was personally selected by her. Learning it was recommended by someone else, he showed a meaningful expression. Because the gift was a new product from a rival family, he warned her to be wary of that so-called friend. At this moment, she's finally certain Alina harbors ill will toward her. Alina timely interrupts the conversation, suggesting a walk in the garden. The ladies excitedly admire the blooming flowers throughout the garden, but she suddenly feels nauseous, her vision darkening. Amid everyone's cries of alarm, she collapses weakly to the ground. Before losing consciousness, she glimpses Alina's triumphant smile. In the parlor, Alina tearfully recounts what happened in the garden. She hints aggrievedly that Romaine deliberately vomited in her rose garden. Sobbing, she says perhaps Romaine never liked her from the start. Sarian immediately pulls his wife protectively into his arms with concern. He angrily accuses Romaine of trampling on Alina's goodwill. He threatens to confront Romaine, unable to tolerate her behavior any longer, but the Duchess suddenly interrupts their conversation. She points out that vomiting at this age is likely a sign of pregnancy. She joyfully announces the family will soon welcome a new life. Cedric is shocked speechless by this news. At this moment, Romaine is trapped in a terrifying dream. On a battlefield with pouring rain, a blood-covered soldier begs her for help. Terrified, she tries to flee but is pulled to the ground. In desperation, she begs another helmeted soldier for death. The moment he raises his sword, she jolts awake. This all-too-real nightmare leaves her shaken. She gets up and flips through the medical book she often studies, trying to find the cause of today's abnormal symptoms, while pondering the original Romaine's unknown secrets. In Alina's room, she's carefully selecting dresses. Sarian responds absent-mindedly to her questions. She suddenly brings up the letters the brothers once wrote to her, saying they promised to always protect her as their sister, Syrian's expression instantly becomes grave. She laughs lightly, pointing out his acting today was somewhat overdone, but says she'll continue to help him keep that secret. She demands he continue cooperating with her plans going forward. Finally, she shows a meaningful, dangerous smile. At this moment, Cedric walks into Romaine's room with a flushed face. He stammers as he asks about her physical condition. Servants then bring in a large pile of exquisite gifts. He awkwardly explains his mother mistakenly thought she was pregnant. Romaine is so shocked, she freezes as if struck by lightning. Cedric gently closes the door, her panicked expression still in his mind. His lips unconsciously curl up, finding her flustered appearance especially adorable. Syrian suddenly appears at the end of the corridor, approaching with a dark expression. Before he can speak, his brother slams him hard against the wall. Syrian angrily demands why he didn't speak up for Alina earlier. He sharply points out Romaine's various extravagant and disgraceful behaviors. Recently, she's even intensified her meddling in estate affairs. Now she even fakes fainting to gain sympathy. He doesn't understand why his brother tolerates such a woman. Cedric calmly responds, this is simply giving his wife the treatment she deserves. Syrian pauses, reminding him not to forget that Alina is family. Memories flood back, that rainy day 10 years ago vivid in his mind. Their parents appeared before them with a frail little girl. That girl named Alina hid under the umbrella, silently crying. For months afterward, she locked herself in her room, unwilling to come out. To cheer her up, the brothers decided to write letters to comfort her, promising to be her true brothers, asking her to emerge from the shadows. Cedric gently brushes off his brother's hand, saying that's all in the past. Alina may be family, but Romaine is equally his wife. He further points out that it's actually his brother and Alina meddling in estate management. Syrian, flustered and angry, argues they have their parents' permission. Cedric smiles and says from now on, he will no longer tolerate this. After he leaves, Syrian mutters that he too despises this charade, but he still completed the task Alina assigned him. At this moment, Romaine falls into that terrible dream again. A girl kneels trembling beside a dying fox. A man threatens that if she doesn't demonstrate her ability, she'll suffer like the fox. The girl, crying, disobeys her mother's warning and reaches out to heal the wound. Romaine wakes from the dream, tears soaking her pillow. Cedric rushes in at the sound, looking at her with concern. She forces a smile, saying she just had a sad dream. He suggests calling a doctor to check on her and clarify the pregnancy misunderstanding. Taking his handkerchief, she notices he's been especially gentle lately, but the rose scent on the handkerchief makes her nauseous again. At this moment, she finally understands the root of her symptoms. She resolves to uncover the truth about this scent. Romaine fights the dizziness, wanting to speak about the abnormal scent, but her vision is already blurred, without even the strength to stand. As she collapses, Cedric doesn't hesitate to cushion her fall with his body. A shattered vase cuts his arm, blood staining the floor. Jane rushes in panicked, immediately calling for a doctor. The next day, after regaining consciousness, she sits at the table full of worry and guilt. Jane consoles her, saying the master is a battle-hardened knight commander, but this comfort doesn't ease her inner guilt in the slightest. At this moment, the Duchess enters with a gentle smile. She's flustered, not knowing how to address this noble lady. The Duchess gently tells her to simply call her mother. Romaine guiltily says Cedric was injured because of her, inwardly analyzing the reason for her abnormal reaction to the rose scent. It's neither an allergy nor a physiological illness. Could it be psychological? Unfortunately, she has no memories from the original owner to reference. The Duchess says her son will be happy to see her so worried about him. She can only continue playing the role of a wife deeply in love with her husband. The Duchess says contentedly it's wonderful to see their mutual affection. Then she speaks of the change in Cedric after his return from the battlefield. That gentle child gradually closed his heart. He refused all marriage proposals until her appearance. This excessive expectation multiplies Romaine's stress. Yet she still musters the courage to ask the question in her heart. That night, she pushes open Cedric's door, wanting to check on his wound. Cedric scolds her for not resting so late. She insists on confirming his injury before she'll leave. She carefully reminds him to sterilize when changing bandages to avoid infection. Cedric suddenly pulls her hand, inviting her to sit by the bed. She awkwardly asks if this is also part of the act. His expression turns serious as he mentions the rose scent on the handkerchief. He found a scent strip that someone had placed in his pocket. Someone deliberately exploited her weakness to the rose scent to harm her. She immediately thinks of Alina but doesn't dare say it, afraid she'll instead be seen as someone sowing discord. He sincerely apologizes to her for his negligence. This apology makes her feel his change. She mentions the Duchess's words about their mutual affection. She lies down reassured, saying their acting is very successful. Soon she falls into deep sleep beside him. Cedric gently strokes her hair, gazing at her sleeping face and whispering, so she still thinks all of this is just acting. Morning sunlight filters through the curtains as Cedric reaches toward his side. That spot is already empty, and an inexplicable sense of loss wells up in his heart. At this moment, Romaine is riding in a carriage with Jane through bustling streets. She keenly notices many differences between this world and the original story, though lacking the original owner's memories. She knows where to find clues. The carriage stops before Duke Hubert's estate, and she walks alone into the reception room. The unfamiliar environment feels eerily familiar, making her uneasy. Nausea suddenly strikes. fragmented images flashing before her eyes. Young Remain is forced by maids to swallow unknown substances. Rods strike her frail body, making heart-wrenching sounds. She realizes these are traumatic memories deeply embedded in the body. A frivolous male voice suddenly breaks her contemplation. The man mockingly asks why she suddenly returned to this house. At this moment, Cedric is at the estate asking about her whereabouts. Learning Jane is accompanying her, he feels somewhat reassured. Then he issues an important task. He orders Roberto to remove all roses from the estate. Roberto reminds him in shock that these were all planted by Alina herself. He insists they must be dealt with, not allowing Remain to smell any rose scent. Roberto watches his departing figure filled with worry, thinking his master has been bewitched by that wicked woman. Cedric enters an inconspicuous woodworking shop. The blind shopkeeper identifies him by footsteps alone. He bluntly asks about the Myers clan. The shopkeeper initially avoids the topic but finally relents under his sincerity. He reveals some survivors escaped persecution by losing their abilities. But along with that, they also lost the wisdom to perceive the world. When the shopkeeper opens his hollow eyes and reveals his surname is Myers, he finally understands that blindness is the price of losing the ability. He tells the shopkeeper about the brutal battlefield scene 5 years ago. Severely wounded, he lay among corpses waiting for death. In his despair, a woman appeared beside him. She anxiously examined his wounds, promising she would save him. Through blurred vision, Cedric made out the newcomer's silhouette. The girl who suddenly appeared on the battlefield confused him greatly. She placed both hands over his wounds, a strange golden light emanating from her palms. Intense pain nearly made him faint, cold sweat soaking his armor. The girl herself was trembling constantly, yet forced herself to continue healing. He noticed the enemy nation's emblem on her clothes and became instantly alert. He grabbed her wrist fiercely, demanding if she came to silence him. The girl panicked and pushed him back down, tears streaming from her eyes. Choking up, she said that saving one person won't change her life, but she absolutely cannot watch a life fade away before her eyes. Her emotion made him involuntarily relax, though he should remain vigilant. His body gradually lost strength. When he awoke again, he was in the military camp, his severe wounds miraculously healed. This memory convinces him that girl was from the Myers clan. After hearing the description, the shopkeeper murmurs that the rumor was actually true. A special child survived. At this moment in Duke Hubert's estate, that man approaches step by step. Remain suppresses the fear in her heart, telling herself there's nothing to fear. She turns and glares at him, a fire burning in her eyes like never before. Terrible images of childhood abuse by him flashed through her mind. The boy smiled viciously as he stuffed roses into her mouth. Thorny stems tore her mouth, blood mixing with tears. This is why she still feels nauseous at the smell of roses. Anger surges like a tide, and she stands up abruptly, realizing those dreams were all sealed, cruel memories. Remain belongs to the Myers clan, not the Duke's biological child at all. This explains everything about why she was treated this way. She says coldly she wants to see her father, her voice carrying determination. Zion contemptuously mocks that she shouldn't have come here. He signals servants to bring a large bouquet of roses, to humiliate her like before. The moment he throws the flowers, she catches the bouquet firmly. Without hesitation, she strikes his face with it, petals scattering everywhere. Zion stares in shock, unable to believe her defiance. She straightens her back, declaring she is no longer the Remain of before. She demands harshly by what right they treat the family's benefactor this way. All that honor and power were obtained with her life. Remain coldly sneers at Zion, declaring they'll go down together. She threatens to expose the truth to the royal family that she's from the Myers clan. She'll also reveal the secret that the war had 0 casualties thanks entirely to her healing abilities. Zion warns her in horror that she'll be executed too. She says carelessly that their father will deal with him first before that happens. Before leaving, Remain tells him to inform their father she's no longer an obedient daughter. Zion trembles with rage but doesn't dare stop her anymore. At this moment, Cedric is asking the shopkeeper what's special about that girl. The shopkeeper says it's not just because she's a rare survivor, it's also because she possesses both healing and killing abilities at the same time. Cedric asks frantically why he's telling him all this. The shopkeeper perceives he's hiding other troubles in his heart. Cedric stammers and admits his body has been abnormal since then. He hesitates for a long time before quietly mentioning his troubles with intimacy. The shopkeeper, shocked, comforts him that he shouldn't feel inferior about it. He explains that the Myers clan usually doesn't use their killing abilities. He speculates that time might have been an accidental mistake. Cedric sadly wonders why this had to happen to him of all people. He recalls how Remain once asked him if he'd ever kissed anyone. Now this feeling makes him even more concerned about his physical condition. He then hurriedly takes his leave. In her dream, Remain sees her mother warning her not to abuse her abilities. Soon after, her parents are forcibly taken away. The heartbreaking scene of her young self crying as she's separated from her parents. Memories surface of her grown-up self secretly delivering herbs to Trauma Village. She wakes with a splitting headache, but has sorted out important clues. She finally knows her real name is Hilda Myers. To hide her abilities, she deliberately played the role of an ill-mannered villainess. Her marriage with Cedric Cedric might be her only way out, she decides to thoroughly investigate the secrets of Trauma Village. Cedric knocks and enters, asking with concern about her trip home. She says lightly that she just greeted Zion. He mentions the upcoming hunting festival to be held in Morville Forest. He considerately says she doesn't have to attend if she's tired. She remembers there are sleep aid herbs there and immediately says she'll go. Cedric awkwardly mentions the tradition of presenting prey to one's beloved. He asks what Romaine would like. She smiles and says she'd like a cute rabbit. Gazing at her smile, Cedric's heart involuntarily races. He suddenly kneels on one knee. He solemnly promises to present her with the finest prey. Romaine is flustered by his sudden vow, her face turning red. Cedric stands up and mentions picking up custom-made new clothes tomorrow. He enthusiastically invites her to come along, his eyes sparkling with anticipation. The next day, she sits in the tailor shop, watching him try on hunting attire. The well-tailored outfit perfectly outlines his upright figure. The clerk describes in detail the lightness and practicality of the special mineral material. She gazes at him entranced, feeling he looks like a knight stepped out of a painting. As they leave the shop, she murmurs that she's reminded again of his status as a knight. Cedric says he's been fighting on battlefields since childhood and is long accustomed to this life. Romaine clenches her hands sympathetically, feeling sad about his experiences, but he calmly says it's to protect those he loves. She can't help but say that those waiting for him would worry terribly. Cedric suddenly gazes at her and asks if she would worry about him too. She blurts out that of course she would, then shyly turns her face away. She hastily explains this is just her duty as a wife. They fall into a subtle silence, the atmosphere suddenly becoming intimate. At this moment, she accidentally glimpses Syrian walking side by side with a strange woman. Their intimate demeanor clearly exceeds the boundaries of ordinary friends. She hurriedly grabs Cedric, wanting to avoid this scene. Her heart races anxiously, afraid he'll see this heartbreaking sight. But Syrian happens to be walking toward the tailor shop. In desperation, she grabs Cedric's collar. She stands on her toes and kisses his lips. Cedric freezes at first. Then he tightly embraces her waist and returns the kiss. When they part, both are breathless, gazing at each other with dazed eyes. She hastily makes up an excuse to explain the sudden kiss. She says she was worried others might misunderstand their relationship, so she deliberately put on an act. Cedric's eyes instantly dim, his tone becoming distant. As he turns to leave, his heart fills with disappointment. So everything was just for the contract after all. On the day of the hunting festival, Romaine changes into practical attire. She notices Syrian and Alina still acting affectionate as ever. She can't help but wonder why the plot keeps deviating more from the original story. Edward enthusiastically comes forward to greet them, but Cedric suddenly interrupts their conversation. She doesn't understand why he suddenly becomes so cold. At this time, Edward mentions news of a giant bear appearing in the forest. Fighting spirit ignites in Cedric's eyes, determined to win, but she worries endlessly about her original plan to gather herbs. Cedric carefully explains the precautions for the hunting festival. He points to a tent in the distance, explaining it's the safe waiting area for the ladies. He reminds her not to cross the boundary into the dangerous hunting area. At this moment, Zion makes a proud entrance surrounded by a crowd. Nobles eagerly compete to pay respects to this war hero's son. Romaine suppresses her disgust, coldly watching this farce. Zion catches sight of her from the corner of his eye and walks over with fake friendliness. His words hint that she's nothing more than a plaything for others' amusement. He even deliberately asks if Cedric also derives pleasure from her. These words make her involuntarily tremble all over. She clenches her fists, telling herself she must endure. Cedric suddenly stands in front of her, his tone stern. He directly rebukes Zion for treating her with such a frivolous attitude. He solemnly declares her existence is not to please anyone. Zion smirks, saying it seems the rumors of their affection are true. Cedric firmly says she's already part of their family. He absolutely won't allow anyone to insult his wife. He then leads Romaine away. Romaine feels both grateful and confused. She wants to ask if his defense was genuine or just an act. Before she can speak, Alina suddenly appears and interrupts. Alina affectionately takes her hand, wanting to go to the resting area. She can no longer tolerate this false intimacy. She coldly shakes off her hand, saying she can walk by herself. As soon as Romaine sits down at the resting area, she hears the ladies' cold mockery. They deliberately bring up how Alina's rose garden was cleared because of her. They hint she should feel guilty about it and reflect properly. She's shocked by this news, anger surging in her chest. She suddenly stands up and walks to them, demanding why she should reflect. She sharply points out Alina's harsh treatment of servants. She warns her to use her brain before pulling those tricks. After speaking, she turns and leaves, leaving everyone stunned. Alina quickly recovers her gentle smile, hiding her embarrassment. Her soft words contain an ominous hint. Edward doesn't understand why Cedric is so indifferent about hunting the bear. He explains with a smile that he needs to find a rabbit for his beloved wife first. Edward shakes his head, saying he's completely lost his mind to love. Walking alone in the forest, Cedric falls into deep thought. He recalls how Romaine trembled when she was humiliated. Rage instantly overwhelmed his reason, making him act without thinking. But she'll probably think think it's just part of the contract when she finds out, but he himself doesn't know when his act became real. At this moment, Remain rejoices at discovering rare herbs. She carefully identifies varieties similar to the ointment she gave Kendall. A sharp arrow suddenly grazes her hair and lodges in a tree trunk. She thinks it's a stray arrow until a second arrow lands at her feet. Only then does she realize someone wants her dead. She lifts her skirt and runs desperately. Dense arrows keep attacking from behind. Suddenly, she hears someone calling her name and instinctively stops. An arrow flies straight toward her heart, and she closes her eyes in despair. The expected pain doesn't come. Cedric shields her with his own body. The arrow lodges deep in his shoulder, blood quickly staining his clothes. She's frightened to tears, but he forces a smile to comfort her. Seeing him about to pull out the arrow, she hurriedly stops him. She then guides him on the correct way to handle it. Remain wants to heal his wound, but he tightly grips her hand to stop her. At this moment, the legendary giant bear slowly passes by them. They hold their breath, grateful to have escaped disaster. Edward rushes over at the sound and immediately prepares to help. Remain cries in self-blame but is gently comforted by him. After wiping her tears, she forces herself to face the situation. After returning home, she carefully recalls the dangerous incident. She's certain the culprit is Zion, who has been bullying her all along. Even though she has the ability to heal, Cedric stopped her. Suddenly, she realizes he might have discovered her secret. This suspicion makes her restless, and she needs to get answers. At dusk, Cedric lies in bed recovering from his arrow wound. Remain gazes at his pale face, her heart full of guilt. She gently opens the medicine box, preparing to change his bandages. The faint sound wakes Cedric, and he weakly opens his eyes. She insists on checking the wound herself to feel at ease. He smiles helplessly and asks if she plans to watch him all night. At this moment, Remain notices the little rabbit in the cage in the corner. She then remembers the promise he made. The little rabbit gently nuzzles her palm, utterly endearing. She's amazed he remembered her principle of valuing life. He deliberately captured this rabbit alive to please her. Cedric says that even though he didn't win the hunt, making his wife happy is enough. He then invites her to the bed to keep him company, like a child seeking affection. Remain helplessly lies beside him but still watches him nervously. She asks worriedly if they found the archer. He comforts her, saying Edward is already investigating and she shouldn't worry. He softly expresses he doesn't want to see her hurt. These words make Remain's heart flutter involuntarily, but she has to remind herself this might just be part of the contract. She gradually falls asleep but has a terrible nightmare. In the dream, Hubert slaps her hard after learning she lost her healing abilities. He calls her a useless waste, only valuable for marriage alliances. She curls up painfully in the dream, clutching the pillow tightly. Cedric senses her distress and tries to wake her, but she unconsciously interlaces her fingers with his, tears streaming down her face. She chokes out a plea not to leave her alone. He embraces her and softly promises never to leave. Under his comfort, Remain finally shows a peaceful smile. The next day, facing the Duchess, she feels ashamed about sleeping so soundly last night. The Duchess suddenly announces she'll transfer household management to her. Alina is shocked and hastily tries to object, but the Duchess insists this is the right decision. Remain recalls her previous conversation with the Duchess. She tactfully asked why Alina, who isn't even married in, manages the household. Now she finally understands that Remark played a crucial role. The Duchess gently explains why she entrusted household matters to Alina. She says Alina has lived in the mansion for years and is more familiar with affairs. Remain understandingly expresses her comprehension and then makes a request. At this moment, the Duchess turns to Alina, hoping they can manage together and assist each other. But these words still devastate Alina, her face turning pale. In the carriage traveling along the country road, Remain is in good spirits. Recalling Alina's stiff expression, she feels a touch of vindictive satisfaction. She realizes taking over household duties will make Cedric's position more secure. She looks forward to him inheriting the title soon so she can gain her freedom. The carriage stops at the entrance to Trauma Village. She quietly instructs the coachman to keep her whereabouts secret. Following the guidance from her dream, she walks toward that familiar little cabin. Pushing open the door, she sees a room full of medicine bottles and books. She discovers a letter in the hidden layer of the bookshelf. Unfolding the letter, she learns it's a suicide note left by the original owner. The letter requests that whoever finds it inform Mrs. Potter Spencer of her death. She can't help but feel sorrow for the soul who foresaw death in that cold mansion. Following the address, she finds a simple dwelling. She gently knocks on the door. The one who opens the door is a blind, elderly woman. Hearing her voice, Aunt Potter excitedly grasps her hands. With tears in her eyes, she says she's been worried something happened to her. During their detailed conversation inside, she confirms this woman is a Myers clan survivor. Aunt Potter mentions the infectious disease that recently broke out in the village. Based on the symptoms, she determines it's hand, foot, and mouth disease. Aunt Potter is grateful that medicine developed by the guild has controlled the outbreak. She's thankful for her secret support all along. She asks if she wants to reveal her true identity to the clan. Remain politely declines, believing it's better to maintain the current situation. She finally understands Remain's struggles in maintaining a dual identity. lady. She hands over the medicine and gems she brought to the old woman. She then mentions Benson's cooperation proposal, looking forward to future medicine development. While relieved, Aunt Potter still worries she's bearing too much alone. She smiles to comfort her, displaying the composure of a countess. Aunt Potter mentions her mother, and Lily would surely be proud of her. This name reminds her of that portrait in the notebook. She realizes this might be the spiritual pillar that sustained Romaine. In a corner late at night, Sylvia appears punctually at the agreed location. Cedric quietly waits for her to report today's surveillance results. She describes in detail Romaine's trip to Trauma Village to visit the blind woman. Hearing about Mrs. Potter's blindness, he immediately thinks of the Myers clan. The mysterious shopkeeper's words echo in his ears again. He connects this to Romaine's unusual healing abilities and various strange things. An astonishing theory gradually forms in his mind. Sylvia suddenly gathers courage to ask the real purpose of the surveillance. She admits she's found the lady completely different from the rumors. She begs him not to misunderstand this kind and competent countess. He's pleased to find this once lonely girl has grown up. He softly explains he only sent someone to secretly protect her out of concern. Sylvia keenly perceives the emotions hidden in his words. She frankly asks the question that makes his heart race. He frantically denies it, but her smiling face surfaces in his mind, recalling how she always emphasizes it's just a contract. Bitterness wells up in his heart. He forces composure to end the conversation, watching Sylvia leave. Cedric stands alone, dejected over feelings he cannot convey. The next morning, Romaine prepares to visit him. Opening the door, she runs into Roberto holding a gift box outside. Jane happens to walk out from the room. Roberto immediately shoves the gift into her hands. His hurriedly departing figure shows indescribable panic. Jane naively thinks this is expensive chocolate meant for the lady. She hastily refuses, but an interesting guess rises in her heart. Cedric sneaks out for a walk. When Romaine finds him, she's both anxious and angry. She scolds him for not resting properly and getting out of bed on his own. Watching her concerned expression, his heart involuntarily races. He finally admits he's fallen deeply in love with the person before him. He can't help but pull her into his embrace, expressing his longing. Romaine pushes him away in alarm, a suspicious blush rising on her face. He hastily explains he was just putting on an act in front of the servants. She grasps his hand and insists on taking him back to his room to rest. Hearing she agrees to accompany him, joy sparkles in his eyes. No one has ever made him so eager to be cared for and loved. This unfamiliar feeling of happiness both frightens and intoxicates him. A week passes swiftly. Cedric's arrow wound has nearly healed. He's reluctant to admit but must acknowledge the miraculous effect of Duke Halliburton's medicine. As he rises and walks to the window, he happens to glimpse Romaine about to go out. She's always been hurried, lately, busy with something unknown. He can't help but wonder when she'll be honest about her Myers clan identity. Perhaps he's not trustworthy enough, which is why she keeps silent. This thought makes him determined to take action to earn her trust. At this moment, Romaine sits properly in the reception room of the Halliburton residence. She notices all the flowers in the room have been replaced with green potted plants. This change secretly surprises her. Does he really value her advice so much? Benson gracefully enters the room, his tone somewhat teasing. He says her sudden visit surprises him, since nobles usually make appointments in advance. She solemnly thanks him, saying Cedric recovered quickly thanks to his medicine. He chuckles and exposes her lie, saying Cedric would never thank him. He then asks about the investigation into the archery incident. She cautiously remains silent. Though she suspects Zion is the culprit, lack of evidence makes it inconvenient to speak directly. She skillfully shifts the topic to Lucia's health condition. Benson says with relief his sister's condition has indeed improved. He takes the opportunity to bring up the cooperation matter again. Romaine honestly says she's not an expert in herbs, but knows professional researchers. She proposes not investigating backgrounds as a condition for jointly advancing medicine development. This condition quite surprises Benson, but he readily agrees. She explains the cooperation plan in detail. The goal is to make medicine accessible to commoners. Benson points out her reputation might affect medicine promotion. She has a flash of inspiration and proposes finding a proxy as a solution. This innovative idea makes Benson's eyes light up with admiration. When he asks if Cedric knows, she gently shakes her head. This is her livelihood prepared for after divorce. There's no need to let him know. In the carriage on the return journey, she finally relaxes her tense nerves. Being with Benson is much more stressful than with Cedric. An image suddenly surfaces in her mind of Cedric wagging his tail and calling her lady. This absurd association makes her laugh out loud. She then annoyingly reminds herself not to forget the future divorce. But that flutter is like spring vines, quietly winding around her heart. Cedric comes again to that familiar carpenter shop, but he finds the shop door tightly closed, completely different from its usual bustle. A passing resident tells him the shopkeeper has been ill for several days. This sudden news makes him deeply worried. As he leaves, he can't help but worry about the shopkeeper's safety. At the mansion entrance, he encounters Romaine just returning from the Halliburton residence. She says with a smile she went to thank Benson for the medicine he gave, but these words stir up a storm in his heart. He can't help but wonder if she insists on divorce because she's interested in Benson. Images of them intimately, together, uncontrollably surface in his mind. He then feels absurd about his wild thoughts. After a hasty goodbye, he flees back to his room. His heart is in chaos. He wants to ask directly but fears hearing the answer. Seeing this, Roberto can't help but come forward to counsel him. He bluntly points out he's already fallen in love. He says the way he looks at the lady is full of affection and jealousy. Roberto enthusiastically expresses he'll fully support him in pursuing happiness. These words make him both embarrassed and secretly pleased. At dinner, the Duke announces Grand Duke Rosette will host a banquet. Cedric insists on accompanying Romain despite his injury. The Duchess reminds them to be cautious and avoid getting involved in disputes. The Grand Duke's two sons are competing for inheritance rights. Romain keenly perceives this is similar to their family situation. She secretly hopes to divorce soon so as not to delay his happiness. Yet she inexplicably feels a trace of reluctance and melancholy. After the meal, she asks with concern about Cedric's injury. He says he doesn't want her to face those difficult ladies alone. This thoughtfulness warms her heart. She takes the opportunity to ask about his progress, discussing the title with the Duke. She speaks frankly that this relates to the end of their contract. These words pierce his heart like a blade. He excitedly grabs her shoulders and demands. He promises he can give her more money, just asking her not to divorce. She asks in confusion if he doesn't like Alina. This sudden question leaves them both stunned. He repeats her question in disbelief. Cedric's intense reaction leaves Romain utterly confused. She clearly remembers the original story setting where he deeply loved Alina. His disgusted expression now plunges her into deep confusion. But he says decisively he only sees Alina as a sister. This answer completely overturns her understanding of the plot. At the banquet several days later, she's still upset about that conversation. She suddenly realizes if the plot has already changed, his tenderness might not be an act. This thought makes her heart race, and she hurriedly forces herself to stop imagining. She feigns composure and praises the garden flowers, trying to divert her attention, but he gazes at her seriously, saying she's more beautiful than all the flowers. This awkward compliment leaves her embarrassed and at a loss. She secretly mocks herself for having the illusion he likes her. Meanwhile, Cedric is also confused why her reactions are completely different from the book's description. The banquet officially begins as the Grand Duke addresses the guests with a welcoming speech. In an unnoticed corner, Alina and Zion quietly meet. Zion angrily demands why she tried to kill at the hunting festival. They originally agreed only to frighten Romain into leaving. If her true identity is exposed, the entire family will suffer. Alina sneers and asks back, if he hates her so much, why can't he bear to kill her? Zion retorts excitedly that not everyone is as cruel as her. Alina recounts how she's repeatedly tried to sabotage Romain but failed every time. From framing her to pushing her into water, even poisoning was useless. She believes only completely eliminating this threat can end the problem forever. She proposes pushing Romain into the lake at tonight's banquet. Recalling recent humiliations, Zion finally hardens his heart. In the banquet hall, he mocks Alina's ruthlessness. He justifies that he harbors murderous intent because of repeated humiliation. Alina sneers and recounts everything Romain has taken away. From her brother's affection to her status in the mansion, nothing was spared. Beneath her sweet smile hides bone-deep resentment. She swears she'll never let Romain take anything that belongs to her again. Several hours earlier, they arrived at the Grand Duke's residence, and attendants enthusiastically introduced the lakeside courtyard. Alina praises the beautiful lake view endlessly, her eyes sparkling with excitement. But Romain gazes at the lake with a pale face, inexplicable fear welling up in her heart. Cruel images of her clansmen being dragged to execution flash through her mind. Her mother screams desperately for her to flee and never look back. Soldiers throw her clansmen one by one into the lake to drown. This memory makes her stomach churn, nearly unable to stand. Cedric keenly notices her distress and watches her worriedly. After arriving at the banquet hall, Alina excuses herself, saying she needs to greet other ladies. Romain secretly feels fortunate to avoid those false pleasantries. Cedric suddenly reminds her not to drink today, looking slightly awkward. She doesn't understand why, but still considerately feeds him chocolate. She asks with concern about his injury, worried he's forcing himself. At this moment, she notices Benson surrounded by a crowd. She ponders the timing to ask about the nominal representative. Cedric suddenly stands in front of her, displeasure in his tone. He asks why she cares so much about Duke Halliburton, jealousy hidden in his eyes. She mistakenly thinks he's unwell and anxiously tells him to rest in the carriage. In the distance, Alina and a long-haired woman secretly observe their every move. The long-haired woman whispers a promise to follow the plan. Alina shows a sinister smile. Romain finally finds a chance to speak with Benson alone. Benson reveals he's found a suitable guarantor and arranges to discuss contract details later. Watching his busy socializing figure, she can't help but marvel at his popularity. At this moment, Romain's father approaches her. He mentions Zion says she's been behaving lately, his tone full of suspicion. He warns her not to affect his soon-to-be-obtained guard management rights. She calmly counters, hinting he should be begging her to keep secrets instead. Hubert becomes furious with shame, accusing her of acting recklessly because there are people around. She sarcastically says it's better than bullying people where there's no one around. After speaking, she turns and leaves. Hubert goes furiously to settle accounts with Zion. Learning the matter is exposed, Zion becomes more determined to eliminate her. The sky suddenly darkens, dark clouds covering the entire banquet venue. A long-haired woman gracefully approaches Romaine. She claims to be a messenger sent by Duke Halliburton. Romaine feels puzzled, thinking this is the nominal representative Benson arranged. Clara smiles and says the Duke has important matters to discuss, asking her to move elsewhere to talk. Romaine follows her inside but discovers the route becoming increasingly remote and eerie. She stops and insists on hearing the message right here, but Clara mysteriously says there's something she must see with her own eyes. At this moment, the sky suddenly fills with dark clouds and heavy rain pours down. Cedric in the carriage senses the abnormal weather and immediately asks Roberto. Learning this is extreme weather that could trigger floods, his face changes drastically. He jumps from the carriage without hesitation, not even bothering to take an umbrella. He rushes toward the mansion through the pouring rain, determined to find Romaine himself. Inside the banquet hall, chaos reigns as guests complain about being trapped by the storm. The Duchess anxiously searches everywhere for Alina and Romaine. Finally, she finds Alina. Alina urgently tries to take the Duchess away. At this moment, Cedric, soaking wet, bursts into the hall, his voice trembling. He urgently asks about Romaine's whereabouts, his eyes full of worry. Alina stammers unclearly, trying to brush it off. He turns to continue searching, but she grabs him. Alina advises him to go home and wait, letting Romaine find her own way back. He firmly refuses, suppressed anger in his voice. He solemnly declares Romaine is family, and the wife he cherishes. Alina appeals to the Duchess for support, but the Duchess agrees with her son's decision and calls for everyone to search together. Alina stands alone, jealousy gnawing at her heart like a venomous snake. She secretly prays Zion can successfully eliminate this threat. At this time, Romaine has followed Clara to the most remote corner of the mansion. She suddenly stops and sternly questions the other's true identity. Clara is still making excuses when she's interrupted by sudden thunder. Romaine finally realizes the danger, but it's too late. A man with a knife silently approaches from behind, the blade gleaming coldly. Cedric frantically shouts her name through the empty mansion. Only cold echoes answer him, fear spreading in his heart. He runs through every corner but can't find the Grand Duke to ask for help. Benson suddenly appears, saying he heard at the entrance that the lady is missing. Cedric asks warily why he cares so much about Romaine. Benson says seriously now's not the time to worry about that. Cedric reluctantly compromises, and they immediately set out to search. At this moment, Romaine awakens in darkness. She discovers she's trapped in a small space. Cold lake water keeps seeping through the cracks, soaking her skirt. She suddenly realizes she's being sunk into the lake and is terrified. She pounds the box walls with all her strength, her cries echoing in the enclosed space. Sylvia hurriedly finds Roberto, reporting the lady's dangerous situation. Roberto calmly analyzes the suspicious footprints on the ground leading toward the lake. They immediately rush toward the lake. At this time by the lake, two perpetrators are preparing to leave the scene. Cedric and Benson suddenly appear, blocking their path. Benson sneers and demands they repeat their earlier conversation. Cedric extends his foot to trip the culprit trying to escape. He looks down at the culprit from above, his gaze sharp as a blade. His voice is ice cold as he threatens them to tell the truth or face death. The lake water has risen to her waist, and Romaine makes her final decision. Rather than repeatedly drowning and reviving, she'll take the risk and break out of the wooden box. She pounds the box walls with all her strength, and purple light suddenly bursts from her palms. The wooden box cracks open with a sound. She takes a final deep breath and swims upward. The bottomless lake water makes her despair. She can't reach the surface no matter how hard she tries. As her consciousness fades, Cedric's image fills her mind. His firm protection, the warmth of his embrace, all vivid in her memory. Tears mix with lake water, and she's unwilling to die like this. Images from their wedding day surface from deep in her memory. When the priest read the vows, she rejoiced sincerely at gaining freedom. Looking at the indifferent groom, she planned to be kicked out of the mansion as soon as possible. The despair of near death now forms a cruel contrast with that earlier relief. Ice-cold water keeps flooding into her mouth and nose, her consciousness gradually fading. She thinks of the bracelet her mother gave her, thinks of that promise. This bracelet was supposed to guide her direction in critical moments, but now it can only sink with her into the dark abyss. Just as she's about to give up, a strong arm wraps around her waist. That embrace is so warm it makes her want to cry. Cedric pulls her to shore, his voice trembling with fear. He calls her name again and again till she opens her eyes. Looking at his anxious face, she suddenly finds him especially charming in this moment. Romaine smiles and thanks him for saving her. Reaching out to hold him tight, he freezes for a moment, then returns an even tighter embrace. Benson awkwardly interrupts them, reminding them there are still matters to handle. After returning to the estate, Romaine wakes up in her own bed, with Jane keeping watch beside her. She hurriedly asks about Cedric's condition, and learns he has a persistent high fever. She immediately rushes to his room and finds him lying in bed with flushed cheeks. She wrings out a towel to help reduce his fever, but he grabs her wrist. His scorching palm transmits an unusual heat. Cedric suddenly lifts her up, his voice carrying barely suppressed excitement. can't. He asks her why he becomes so abnormal whenever he sees her. She worries the fever has damaged his brain and tries to calm him down. But he says all of this is because of her. Cedric's gentle kiss lands on the back of her hand, expressing his helpless infatuation. Then he holds her tightly, in his arms, sharing his body heat. When she wants to fetch a doctor, Cedric holds her wrist. Then he kisses her lips deeply. After a long while, he reluctantly pulls away. Cedric confesses that after nearly losing her, he can no longer hide his feelings. He solemnly declares his love and asks her to stay by his side forever. She lowers her head, an indescribable pain welling up in her heart. He considerately says she doesn't need to answer right away. He just wants to hold her a little longer. Romain's heartbeat accelerates uncontrollably. This sincere affection makes her even more determined to divorce. Night falls deep as Cedric and Sylvia interrogate the prisoner in the dense forest. Clara kneels on the ground trembling, her face pale as paper. She confesses in terror that Zion is the mastermind behind it all. Cedric sneers and points out she's accustomed to lying to nobles. The cold gleam of an unsheathed sword reflects in her terrified pupils. Clara trembles and confesses that Alina is also involved. All the hidden arrows at the hunting tournament were carefully planned by Alina. They just need to find the blacksmith who made the arrowheads to obtain evidence. Cedric suppresses his shock and notes down the clues with a grave expression. Clara begs for mercy repeatedly, hoping to trade information for her life, but he ruthlessly refuses this deal. The next day, Romain arrives at Duke Halliburton's estate as agreed. Benson takes out the contract draft and mentions the king is interested in the new medicine. This will greatly benefit their upcoming pharmaceutical venture. She confirms he will keep the pharmaceutical methods secret. Benson suddenly wonders why her husband is also present. She laughs awkwardly, thinking of that feverish night. Cedric had long discovered she's from the Myers clan. He sincerely hoped there would be no secrets between husband and wife. Under his almost pleading request, she finally confessed everything. At this moment, Cedric's dark gaze makes Benson feel uncomfortable. Lucia appears at the right time and invites Romain to talk privately. She follows anxiously, worried about the two men being left alone. Lucia first thanks her for improving her health condition. Then she shyly confesses she once had a one-sided love for Cedric. She explains that because she rarely went out, she didn't know he was already married. But after seeing Romain at the party, she sorted out her feelings. Romain suddenly realizes why Benson dislikes Cedric. She gently holds Lucia's hand and says she doesn't mind at all. Instead, she's glad her husband is seen as a handsome knight in others' eyes. Lucia says touched that she now likes Romain even more. At this time, Zion is throwing a fit at the Duke's mansion. Furious about the fact that Romain is still alive, he orders a maid to find out who rescued Romain. He swears through gritted teeth that he must eliminate this thorn in his side. Hubert suddenly appears behind Zion, questioning him with a cold voice. Zion shudders in fear and hurriedly turns around to face his father. He stammers an explanation that he was inquiring about the reason for Romain's absence. Hubert frowns and scolds him displeasedly for meddling. Zion tries to defend himself, saying he was worried about affecting his father's plans. This explanation only makes Hubert more furious. He sternly warns Zion not to interfere in these meaningless matters again. His tone is full of disappointment in this good-for-nothing son. Zion breaks into a cold sweat and repeatedly bows his head to admit his mistakes. Hubert says grimly that if he does it again, he won't let him off lightly. He then reveals that the king is about to grant him management of the guards. This position means being able to mobilize most of the kingdom's military forces. Zion realizes in shock the truth behind his father's years of scheming. From betraying his homeland to adopting Romain, everything was for this goal. Hubert finally orders him sternly to behave himself during this period. As he turns to leave, he doesn't forget to curse him as a useless fellow. Zion bites his lip, feeling that his father has never taken him seriously. He secretly swears to eliminate Romain to vent his anger. At this time, the atmosphere in the small cabin in Trauma Village is warm. Mrs. Potter Spencer tells her with relief that everyone is willing to sign the cooperation agreement. Although some worry about being taken advantage of, they still choose to trust her. She also takes out a carefully organized pharmaceutical research notebook as a gift. Romain joyfully flips through this precious record of results. Mrs. Potter Spencer says gently that this is a treasure about to be revealed. She grips the notebook tightly and voices her grand aspirations. She hopes to make the kingdom of Martin better through this venture. Mrs. Potter Spencer warmly comforts her, saying she'll support her even if she fails. Deep down, she knows her life is ending but doesn't dare say it out loud. She can only pretend to be optimistic and say the guild still has plenty of time. Mrs. Potter Spencer suddenly mentions there was once a young lady similar to her. That mysterious woman also did everything to help the villagers, but one day she suddenly disappeared without any warning. As she speaks, she gently holds Romain's hand and tells her not to bear everything alone. Romain is deeply moved. At dusk, Romain returns home and is greeted with a surprising invitation. Cedric traps her against the wall and invites her to bathe together. He waits for her answer, both shy and nervous. She suppresses her feelings and firmly rejects his confession. This unexpected answer leaves him stunned in place. Cedric eagerly states he doesn't care that she's from the Myers clan. He says with a trembling voice that this is exactly why he must protect her. But Romaine says softly that he's a good man who deserves someone better. As she turns to leave, her heart aches like a knife cutting it, but she forces herself not to look back. In the bathroom, she regrets her decisiveness. She clearly loves him deeply, but because her life is ending, she doesn't dare delay him. She forces herself to stay strong and wants to complete her unfinished wishes in this world. But in the mirror, she discovers inexplicable bruises on her body. Meanwhile, Cedric meets Alina in the courtyard. He straightforwardly announces his decision to divorce Romaine. Alina is surprised by this sudden decision. He says coldly that this marriage was just a temporary measure all along. He originally wanted to use it to gain the king's trust and the guard captain position. Now all of these have been seized first by Duke Carlisle. He also mentions that strange things have been happening frequently since Romaine arrived. He especially emphasizes severely punishing the culprit who shot arrows to hurt people. Alina is terrified, afraid her crime will be exposed. She decides to strike first and confesses she's the mastermind. She lies, claiming she concealed Romaine's identity to protect him. She says Duke Hubert's rise is entirely due to Romaine's abilities. Cedric presses her on how she learned this secret. She claims she accidentally overheard Zion's conversation and was threatened. She tearfully says she was forced to follow Zion's instructions. Cedric appears sympathetic on the surface but sees through the lies in his heart. He recalls the mercenaries' confessions confirming their accomplices. He decides to play along and pretend to believe her story. He says gently not to meet with Zion anymore after this. He promises to solve this matter secretly to protect her. Alina is deeply moved, thinking she fooled him, but Cedric swears in his heart to clear all obstacles for Romaine. The next day, the Duchess informs her of news that Viscount Ian Raleigh will soon host a tea party. She suggests they order new clothes to attend together. Romaine feels this recognition is especially precious, but she worries yesterday's rejection will affect today's interactions. But Cedric readily agrees without any grudge. She's moved by his tolerance and makes a secret resolution to cherish every moment spent with him in the little time she has left. Jane panics when she hears the name of the tea party host. She nervously mentions that Miss Cordelia has always had a secret crush on the Earl. Romaine is shocked by this sudden news. Jane recounts their childhood, friendship, reading together since they were young. She mentions that Cordelia is now the princess's court tutor. Romaine can't help but admire how excellent and well-matched this lady is. Jane reveals an even earlier connection. Cedric saved Cordelia's life when they were children. Since then, Cordelia has considered him her first love. Romaine now remembers there is indeed such a character in the book. Jane says Cedric went to great lengths to refuse her and soon became engaged to Romaine. She smiles bitterly and mocks herself for obstructing their love. Jane quickly denies it, saying the Earl now deeply loves his lady, but she feels perhaps he would be happier with Cordelia. But thinking of him being with someone else causes her unbearable heartache. At this time, Cedric is in private discussion with Guard Captain Boris. Boris is looking for a successor as his condition worsens. The king favors Duke Carlisle to succeed as captain. Cedric tests Boris's opinion on this decision. Boris expresses helplessly that many things don't go as wished, but he keenly senses Cedric seems to have other intentions. Cedric cleverly deflects by citing Knight's loyalty. He suggests exercising voting rights at the Knights Commander meeting. Boris worries this will lose the king's trust. Cedric continues to persuade, pointing out many nobles also have doubts. Finally, Boris asks about candidates who can compete with Carlisle. He confidently recommends himself, his gaze firm. Alina and Syrian enjoy afternoon tea in the courtyard. He presents her with a necklace she has long admired as a gift. She accepts it joyfully, but her words carry hidden meaning. Caught out, Syrian musters courage to confess he has a beloved. She's a commoner, and he's willing to give up everything for her. Alina accuses Syrian of being selfish. Then she pretends she can continue to cooperate with Syrian to deal with their parents. After he leaves, Alina finally explodes, furious at his lack of ambition. She never expected her carefully chosen fiancé would be such a lovesick fool. Then she thinks of Cedric's burning ambition. She feels such a man is worthy of her. She secretly decides to take Romaine's place. The royal chamberlain receives Duke Hubert in the magnificent hall. He clearly states His Majesty is considering appointing him as guard captain. Hubert pretends to worry, saying the nobles don't approve of this. The royal chamberlain arrogantly tells him not to mind others' opinions. Hubert humbly requests his full support. After the secret discussion ends, Hubert walks out of the room with a dark expression. He curses in a low voice about the royal chamberlain greedily demanding territory as a condition. But thinking the plan is progressing, he can only endure for now. Suddenly, he widens his eyes and sees Cedric's figure. He watches him walk straight toward the guard captain's office. Hubert's expression instantly becomes ferocious and terrifying. He speculates through gritted teeth that he's also competing for this position. Meanwhile, Romaine follows Benson to a building. She's amazed at his efficient preparation speed. Benson proudly introduces this renovated pharmaceutical factory. He enthusiastically invites her inside to tour the carefully designed space. Work tables and necessary equipment are all prepared according to requirements. The conference room is specially designed as a secret chamber connected to the back door. She's delighted to find he remembered to keep it secret from the guild. Romaine sincerely thanks him for the effort he put into this project. But Benson mysteriously says there's an even more important place to show her. He pushes open a door, revealing a warm and comfortable personal workspace, thoughtfully prepared a private space for her to think alone. She gratefully holds his hand to express her thanks. Benson is slightly startled by this sudden closeness. He privately thinks she's too naive and lacks caution. He suggests going to the basement to continue the tour. Going down the stairs, her hand is scratched by a nail on the handrail. Benson turns back with concern to ask about the injury. She hurriedly hides her hand behind her back, saying it's just a minor injury. Romaine is terrified inside, afraid her healing ability will be exposed. But Benson notices the blood dripping on the floor. He suddenly smiles and asks what she's really afraid of. She stares in shock, her heartbeat nearly stopping. He says softly that the wound should be healed by now. Then, under her questioning, Benson finally calls out her long-buried true name. He gently speaks his heartfelt words of missing her all this time. Benson gazes into her eyes, his voice low and gentle. He confesses he knew her true identity from the very beginning. He invites her back to the estate, saying he has a long story to tell. In the quiet study, he gently unveils a painting. The blonde woman's face in the painting makes Romaine instantly hold her breath. Memories flood in like a tide. She recalls that night of escape. Young her holding her sister's hand, running desperately in the darkness. Rakshna embraced them tightly, crying tears of joy. She pressed clean clothes and food into their hands, pointing out the safe direction. She said tearfully this was all she could do, her voice full of guilt. She urged them to keep their mother's bracelet as a token. Now looking at the portrait, Romaine's tears fall silently. Benson says softly this is his mother, Rachna Myers. Now she should understand why he would never harm her. Romaine wipes her tears, an indescribable emotion welling up in her heart. In the comfortable chair, Benson begins recounting the past. His mother often took him to the Myers clan's secluded village. There he first met her as a child. If not for that tragedy, they should have become close friends. His mother escaped disaster by hiding her identity through marriage, but could only watch helplessly as her people suffered misfortune. Romaine guesses Rachna died of illness from excessive grief, but Benson reveals a shocking truth. His mother died because she couldn't use her healing ability. Accumulated healing power transforms into lethal toxins in the body. This truth reminds her of the reason she foresaw her own death. Benson keenly points out her physical condition isn't optimistic either. He noticed long ago the faint bruises beneath her sleeves. He questions why she still won't tell Cedric the truth. She frantically explains she doesn't want to drag him into danger, but Benson says she should give those left behind a chance to say goodbye. She's surprised he can sympathize with Cedric's situation. He says bitterly he also experienced such a farewell. Every time he sees her, he thinks of his mother's rushing figure. She suddenly understands who the lady Mrs. Potter Spencer mentioned was. Benson says softly he's completing his mother's unfinished work. This statement makes Benson rarely show a bashful expression. He suddenly asks about Lily's situation, and Romaine is immediately at a loss for words. That girl in the portrait has long lost her abilities. Memories flood in like a tide. That dilapidated cabin reappears before her eyes. Hubert rudely barged into their hiding place with soldiers. His cold gaze swept the room, asking if there were other children. Romaine suppressed her fear, catching a glimpse of her sister in the corner. Thinking of Lily's safety, she mustered courage to claim she was alone. Hubert smiled with satisfaction and ordered this brave girl to be taken away. In the moment of turning to leave, the sisters silently said goodbye in their hearts. When they reunited years later, Lily had lost her sight and her heart was severely damaged. Only now does she understand all of Romaine's efforts were to save her sister. These memories are so vivid, as if they were her own experiences. Benson sincerely offers to help find a treatment method. She asks if he and Lucia inherited the healing ability. Learning this is a mental illness and not hereditary, she secretly feels relieved. She decides to go visit her poor sister immediately. At this time, Cedric finally finds the shopkeeper who disappeared for days. The old man smiles leisurely, saying he went fishing, making Cedric worry for nothing. He urgently inquires about that special girl's whereabouts. The shopkeeper reveals gravely the truth about healing power backlash. Not using the ability for a long time gradually erodes the user's life. 5 years have passed. That girl is probably near death. Cedric suddenly recalls Romaine saying things I still need to do when she refused. Turns out this wasn't an excuse, but she truly has little time left. Upon further questioning, he learns that bruises appearing on the body are a clear sign. After thanking the shopkeeper, Cedric resolves to have an honest talk with her soon. At this time, Romaine is riding with Jane toward Trauma Village. The narrow mountain path makes Jane worry about the journey's safety. She confidently leads the way, following the route in her memory. Romaine considerately asks if Jane feels tired, but is firmly denied. Reaching the most treacherous part, she decides to dismount and walk. Just as she dismounts, the horse suddenly rears up in fright. The reins slip from her hand and she falls backward. Just at this critical moment, as she's about to fall from the horse, Jane rushes forward like an arrow and catches her steadily. She asks in panic if Romaine is all right, her voice trembling. Still shaken, she leans in Jane's arms, full of astonishment. Jane was able to reach her side instantly from such a distance. She softly praises Jane's athletic ability as truly remarkable. Jane shows a shy smile, saying she was born with great strength. Romaine calms the frightened horse. Jane suddenly cries out, pointing at her face, her voice full of panic. Only then does she feel warm liquid flowing from her nose. Jane hurriedly hands her a handkerchief. She wipes the unstoppable nosebleed, an ominous feeling rising in her heart. Jane thinks this is from the fright and spins around anxiously, but she understands this isn't because of the earlier accident. This sudden nosebleed is related to her fading healing ability. At dusk, they finally reach that hidden village. She softly calls out that familiar name, her tone gentle. Lily fumbles her way out, her face showing surprise and uncertainty. She asks tremblingly if it's really Miss Romaine. Romaine firmly holds Lily's hand, responding affirmatively. Lily smiles and says she hasn't heard any news in a long time and has been very worried. She apologetically explains she's been too busy recently to come visit. Lily turns and calls out that the hiding children can come out now. A group of children timidly emerge from their hiding places. Learning someone has been inquiring about the Myers clan recently, she had the children hide. A wave of bitterness surges in Romaine's heart. The situation still hasn't changed. Following Lily into the inner room, she's full of conflicting feelings. Lily clearly doesn't know she's the sister lost for so many years, and she's no longer the original Hilda, but she still resolves to fulfill Romaine's wish. She softly asks if Lily would like to leave with her. She promises to give her a warm home and a life without worries. Lily hesitates for a moment but still shakes her head in refusal. She says she must stay to care for these helpless children. She doesn't want them to taste the pain of abandonment again. These words pierce her heart like a blade. Turns out, Lily always thought her sister abandoned her. She suppresses her heartache and changes the subject, saying she wants to examine Lily. Lily is touched and thanks her for her kindness. She swears in her heart to clear up this misunderstanding someday. Late at night, returning to the estate, she's startled when she opens the door. Cedric is standing behind the door waiting for her to return. He approaches step by step, demanding to know where she went. She nervously clutches her clothes, not daring to reveal the truth, afraid it will bring danger to the Myers clan. He suddenly grabs her wrist, the force so strong it hurts. Ignoring her struggle, he forcibly rolls up her sleeve. When he sees those bruises, his voice trembles. He asks incredulously what secret she's been hiding. Romaine tries frantically to cover it up. Cedric's voice is low and pained as he advances step by step. He says even if she has someone else in her heart, he can accept it. But he can't tolerate her repeated deception and concealment. Tears slide uncontrollably from his eyes. Those scalding tears feel like they're striking her heart. She never imagined she was so important in his heart. She recalls his sincere confessions and protection time after time. Even knowing she's from the Myers clan, he never backed down. Benson's advice echoes in her ears, to give people the chance to say goodbye. She avoided out of fear, but ultimately hurt him more deeply. Romaine finally musters courage to speak the fear buried deep in her heart. She confesses tremblingly the truth that she's about to die. Cedric is struck as if by lightning, his last hope shattered. She explains the power backlash will transform into a lethal disease. She chokes up and apologizes for concealing it all this time, but he suddenly pulls her tightly into his embrace. His voice is full of suppressed fear and heartache, afraid she would never speak the truth until the end and just disappear from his life. Romaine can't believe he forgives her so easily. He says gently he knows she was thinking of him. He firmly promises to stay by her side no matter who she is. Just as she once pulled him back from the brink of death, this time it's his turn to save her. She's deeply moved by this devotion. Romaine speaks her wish to help her people in the remaining time. She mentions the business venture with Benson, and she hopes to gain recognition through developing medicines, so the Myers clan can live peacefully in the sunlight. When that day comes, she'll reveal her identity and never let him be threatened because of her. He aches for her bearing all this alone. He asks softly how much time she has left. Romaine mentions Benson's mother's similar fate. She doesn't want him to remember only her suffering appearance. Romaine takes his hand and makes a promise. Though she doesn't know how long she can live, she wants to find a way to survive together with him. She begs him to believe in her determination. At this moment, Cedric feels unprecedented happiness. He solemnly vows to believe in her. He kisses her trembling lips deeply. Their fingers interlock as if they'll never part. After parting, he softly requests to see her injuries. She slowly lifts her skirt to reveal her legs. Hideous bruises and scars cover her skin. This shocking sight leaves him horrified. She says with a trembling voice these were left by her father to test her abilities. Cedric's fists unconsciously clench, veins bulging. She lowers her head and speaks softly of being nothing but a plaything in that house. Not just her father and brother. Even the servants could abuse her at will. Now that she's lost her use, they'll surely come to silence her permanently. Rather than wait for death, better to actively expose the whole truth. At breakfast the next day, the Duchess gently asks about her business. Cedric answers on her behalf that they're developing perfume products. The Duchess praises her talent and boldness with delight. She modestly says she simply likes the scent of perfume, thanks to meeting a capable business partner. When she mentions the partner is Benson, the atmosphere instantly freezes. Even more surprising is that Cedric also invested in this project. The Duchess looks worriedly at her son but sees him composed. Alina is utterly shocked. This completely disrupts her plans. She doesn't understand what Cedric is planning. At the Knights' Council a few days later, Hubert is brimming with confidence, thinking today will officially announce his succession as captain. But Boris suddenly announces a fair voting election. Hubert suppresses his fury, confident no one can compete with him. When Cedric also stands up, the hall erupts. Hubert speaks first, emphasizing his 20 years of experience, subtly mocking Cedric as merely a greenhorn with shallow credentials. Cedric calmly takes up the topic. He sharply points out most of that experience was serving other countries. This remark precisely hits Hubert's weak spot. Those who originally favored, Hubert, begin to waver. Finally, the council decides to postpone the vote for further consideration. Cedric knows his purpose has been achieved. He secretly vows to seek justice for Romain. The first one to settle accounts with is this cruel Hubert. After the meeting, as people leave one by one, Hubert suddenly stops Cedric. He lowers his voice and questions why he's interfering to disrupt the originally stable situation. But Cedric remains unmoved, his tone calm as usual. Hubert threatens him angrily to consider the consequences carefully. Cedric states, "It's natural to have ambitions for the guard captain position." Hubert turns pale with anger but is helpless. Cedric timely ends this meaningless dispute. He states he'll reconsider this decision before the next meeting. He deliberately emphasizes this is a concession made for his wife. Hubert's eyes immediately light up, confirming his obsession with Romain. Cedric seizes the opportunity to present one of Romain's requests. This sudden request makes Hubert wary. After returning to the estate, Hubert immediately summons his most trusted maid. He asks who the most senior servant is besides her. Learning it's Rodin, he shows a meaningful smile. He says Romain's husband, worries she's too lonely, and requests they go keep her company. This arrangement suits Hubert perfectly. He can monitor them. Diana knowingly expresses she'll properly accompany the young miss. Shortly after, a carriage arrives to pick up the two servants. Diana is secretly pleased, thinking dealing with the miss will be a piece of cake, plotting to make her experience the fear of being dominated again. During the carriage ride, both fall asleep one after another. When they wake, they find the carriage stopped in a deserted wilderness. Diana frantically shakes awake the still sleeping Rodin. The carriage door suddenly opens. Cedric stands with sword in hand. They hurriedly explain they came under the Duke's orders, but the sword tip is already at his throat, bone-chillingly cold. He says coldly he'll personally deal with those who tormented Romain. Sylvia reminds him daylight is approaching. They should hurry. He ponders for a moment and feels direct execution is too easy. He orders them imprisoned, here with only minimal water and food. The two cry out for mercy, claiming they were all forced by the Duke. He ruthlessly exposes their lies. He points out truly kind servants were driven out of the estate long ago. Those who remain to the end are all Hubert's most loyal henchmen. As Cedric turns to leave, he instructs Sylvia to leave them here forever. For Romain, this revenge has only just begun.